Pioneer Sleeper series is back, and we've got a set that hasn't even come out yet. We're talking about Theros Beyond Death Pioneer Sleepers.
Yep, we pick them, you look at them, we play Pioneer, we are right about some, we are wrong about some. The video starts right now.
Hello and welcome to the day.
Thank you for spending your time with us.
I'm Jake.
I'm Joel. Welcome back to another episode of Jake and Joel Are Magic. We are going to talk about our Pioneer Sleeper picks from Theros Beyond Death. But first, if it's your first time here watching a video, we appreciate you. Welcome. If you want to stay up to the minute with the latest decks and strategy for Pioneer, Commander, Historic, Standard, Brawl, you want to talk about MTG Finance news and specs, or you just want to see us open some booster packs, hit that subscribe button before you leave.
Yeah, that's right. You're in the right place. If you enjoyed the Pioneer Sleeper series, it's back. Click subscribe if you enjoyed it. We're going to talk about some cards right now. Joel, let's get into it.
Yep, we got Treacherous Blessing up first. I love this card because I would combine this card with Final Payment. Final Payment is 1 black, 1 white, destroy target creature. As an additional cost, you either have to sack a creature or enchantment or take 5 damage. Treacherous Blessing, 3 mana, enter the battlefield, draw 3 cards. Now, whenever you're casting a spell, you're going to lose a life. But whenever it becomes the target of a spell or ability, sacrifice it. Now look, why don't we just sacrifice Treacherous Blessing to kill target creature?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a really good idea. This card is super cheap right now, which is something that we forgot to mention in the beginning of this. With our Sleeper series, the entire idea around all of the cards that you're about to see is they're all cheap cards. Most of them are like $3 or less.
Yep, under $5
right
is what we try to aim for. There's a lot of good cards, obviously, $10, $20 cards that are already that high in pre-order and will probably make their mark on Pioneer. But we try to shoot for the ones under the radar that you might want to pick up before they explode.
That's it. Couldn't have said it better myself. So with this card, it's like a couple bucks. Draws cards. It seems good.
Absolutely. Tectonic Giant is up next. The red deck right now is called Chonky Red, and it curves out with Chandra at 4 and then Glorybringer Dragon Boy at 5. I think that this is a dope 4-drop, at least that I want to play test. When it attacks or becomes targeted by your opponent for removal, I'm assuming, it lightning bolts your opponent right in the face, or lets you look at the top 2 and pick one, and you can cast it until your next turn. You don't even have to have the mana this turn.
Yeah, you know, the floor of this card being you played a 4/4, they go to remove it, they've wasted a removal on it, and you've done a lightning bolt to their face. It seems like a really, really good starting point for a powerful card. Also, that 4-butt, I like it more than... I always bring up this card, but Bonecrusher Giant is a 4/3, but it's really easy to answer a lot of the time. But it does a similar effect. It deals 2 to the opponent when they go to remove it. This card deals 3 to the opponent if they go to remove it, and also offers a little bit of versatility while having that big butt, that 4-butt. This card is going to block well, and it's going to be really, really pesky.
Yeah, and it's still super cheap right now. And I know we're talking about Pioneer, but it's worth noting, since Jake mentioned Bonecrusher Giant, a pretty solid curve in Burn or a red deck in Standard would be turn 2 Stomp, turn 3 Bonecrusher Giant, turn 4 Tectonic Giant. That's a pretty solid curve out right there. Next up, we got Nylea's Intervention. Jake, you take this one.
Yeah, sure. I'll go ahead and take this one. Joel's not super high on this card, but I do like it in a Pioneer aspect because you can use it to go grab singleton copies of important lands. Lands like Detection Tower, which is going to allow you to turn off Hexproof and Indestructible on your opponent's creatures, or a card like Field of Ruin, which is going to answer a transformed Search for Azcanta, or a transformed Legion's Landing. It becomes the create dudes.
Yeah.
But yeah, any kind of a land that's going to have a specific effect, this is going to allow you to run singleton copies of those because you can go tutor them up if need be. I see this running in like a deck that runs a lot of ramp. In one aspect of the card, you can thin out your deck by grabbing lands, and then you're just going to be playing a land every turn and hopefully just draw heat off the top of your deck. But then also the aspect of, well, I'm going to go grab utility lands that are going to be important and versatile in closing out certain matchups.
Yeah, it might possibly combine well with Nissa because she's going to be turning the lands into creatures, and you can just kind of infinitely drop down your forests, because she's also going to let you pay into an X spell for a lot. We've seen that a lot in Standard with Hydroid Krasis. So sure. I think
and speaking of Hydroid Krasis, there is the side of this card that we didn't even talk about at all, which is it deals twice X damage to each creature with flying.
Right.
That twice X is going to multiply pretty quick in a deck that has ramp. You should be able to clear everything in the skies with this if you're playing it right.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Next up is Enigmatic Incarnation. This card is still super cheap, and it just looks like a card that somebody's going to break, and it's going to lead to a ban.
Yeah, well, it has that birthing pod aspect to it, and there's something very different about this, and it's when you sacrifice another enchantment, if you do, search for a creature card with converted mana cost equal to 1 plus the sacrifice creature enchantment's converted mana cost.
Right.
So why this is important is because there's a lot of cards in this set that are creatures and enchantments. So if you build it right and there are the correct ETBs, you can do a lot with this, and it's one of those cards that as more cards are spoiled in time, it's one of those cards that I think is going to age like a fine wine, and it's going to get better as more and more cards come out.
Yeah, I mean, we started the whole list with Treacherous Blessing, which is an enchantment that wants to get sacrificed. So, not a bad thing to do with Treacherous Blessing, sack that, go get a creature that's a 4-cost. Speaking of 4-cost creatures, we got Haktos, the Unscarred, next. This is a card that Jake and I have had a hard time with. Number one, we were wrong in our last Pioneer video about exactly how it works with Torpor Orb effects. Number two, it's just so hard to analyze without actually sitting there and playing with it and seeing how it feels. Jake and I are a lot about how a card feels when it's on our side of the field, when it's on our opponent's side of the field, and how hard it is to deal with. Haktos, it seems like it should be super dope.
Yeah, the way that you answer this card is incredibly narrow, and it's unpredictable. That was something that somebody said online, and it resonated with me, and it really has stuck. You could have a very specific way, or you could have specific removal that's in your sideboard or in your main board, and it may just not match up with Haktos. So you could just get blown out just specifically because all of your removal is 2 and 3, and now for some reason Haktos is immune to everything but 4, and now you're just kind of like sitting there up Schitt's Creek going, all right, go get in with your bad 6-1 there, buddy.
Yeah.
It's a strong card, and I think it has a lot of potential, and it's fun. Again, this is fun to me. I do like the randomness of the 2, 3, 4, which is something that I would say in the past, when I think about a game like Hearthstone, may have bothered me, but I am excited to see how this card plays out.
It's interesting to me, too, because it's going to have protection from stuff that you could do to Haktos as well. It doesn't slot beautifully into, the Feather deck that runs a lot of buffs and protection on your side. It kind of wants to be in a deck, number one, that can cast it, because that mana cost is fairly restrictive, and two, in a deck that really doesn't care that it's there and it's not the main plan, but it's just a really annoying thing that your opponent is going to have to deal with and may win you the game. So it's like, this is the dopest plan B that you can possibly have for a deck that can cast this, I think. I like how in Pioneer it dodges Wild Slash, which is one of the main removal spells in the format. It dodges, it can't be fatally pushed.
Any small blocker, it gives zero shits about.
Yeah,
too,
tokens and 1-drops it could give a shit about. Yeah, it's interesting. It doesn't have haste. It does. I know it's already a keyword soup on there, or a word soup anyway. But I kind of wish it had more. But I don't know. We'll see. This is one of the main cards that I'm super pumped to test and see if it's got legs.
Yeah, I think it would be cool if in the art, if Haktos had grabbed one of the arrows and it were just broken in half in his hand there. I think that would be just like, I do not care about your volley of arrows.
No,
I will eat them. Maybe if he had one in his mouth, with
a
rose in his mouth.
Next,
just like a rose.
Next up is Kunoros or Kunoros, Hound of Athreos. Now, this is a sideboard card to me, but I think it's an awesome sideboard card. Vigiminutes lifelink on a 3/3 for 3 is already just like Value City. Plus, if you are playing this against the right deck, creature cards in graveyards can enter the battlefield. Sorry, Blue-Red Phoenix, you can't play anymore, and players can't cast spells from graveyards. I think that this is going to be an awesome sideboard card in decks with these colors.
Yeah, I can't really say anything more about the card. I agree with everything that you've said about it. It is specifically a sideboard card, but also in limited, this card is going to be a house. I know we're talking about Pioneer here, but
yeah,
just
such a house in
Menace
limited.
lifelink in limited is amazing. And then also in certain situations, Menace lifelink, this card looks main boardable. Like if you know what your meta is at your game store,
Yeah.
you could just be like, yeah, you know what just destroys my meta because everybody wants to play graveyard decks is Kunoros. So I run it in the main board and I make a lot of friends.
Yeah, not a bad strategy. You know, you do have to think when you're analyzing these cards. We've already got Graveyard Hate coming out of the sideboard in the form of Tormod's Crypt, and so you've got to beat Tormod's Crypt at its own game, which is tough because it's 0 cost and can activate immediately. But you also have to catch the blue-red. If we're talking about the Phoenix player, you have to catch the Phoenix player with their pants down with a lot of Phoenixes in the graveyard, and then you Tormod's Crypt them. So it's all about timing. Kunoros shuts it off completely, but Kunoros can also be removed. It's a trade-off,
Exactly.
you know? It's a trade-off.
Yeah. Right.
Man, next up, Kiora bests the 7 mana.
Yeah, dude. This is my inclusion, but we've got a ton of great stuff going on this card. The fact that Agent of Treachery, and oftentimes Agent of Treachery gets recurred from a graveyard, but the fact that we have an Agent of Treachery as the final phase of this saga, that's like the floor of the card, is like eventually you're taking control of a target permanent, but you're creating an 8/8 Kraken with hexproof.
Yeah, I would consider that the floor because the enchantment can get removed.
That's true.
So your floor is an 8/8 hexproof for 7. Do I wish it had trample? Absolutely. It is still an 8/8 hexproof though.
Yeah. I think this card ends up in like a Simic or a Bant ramp kind of thing. It's very, very powerful. You're getting an 8/8 with trample, and we're talking about Pioneer. Obviously, Standard is going to be littered with a ton of enchantment removal effects, but when you go to a format like Pioneer, the enchantment removal is most likely going to come in from the sideboard. So this card, if you're ramping into it, it's going to be really, really hard for your opponent to turn the corner against this. I see, playing a bunch of mana dorks and a bunch of ramp spells, and then casting this probably as early as like turn 4, turn 5, getting that big 8/8, and then next turn you're tapping down your opponent, so you're probably going to get in with the 8/8. And then additionally after that, you're taking control of their biggest permanent. Now, granted, after game 1, after you close out the game, they're probably going to bring in enchantment removal, but I would say you're probably going to have a suite of counter magic that's going to be in your sideboard if this is a blue-green deck. I think that this card being at like a $3 price point is extremely low considered the power level for this 7 mana. I would say these effects all put together, if I had to give it like a mana cost that I think was fair, like if you're going to get all 3 of them, I would say maybe like 15 to 18 mana on the low. Like there's a ton of really good stuff going on here.
I really like also that third part of it, that third phase of the saga says gain control of target permanent. So you're never going to brick. You can at the very least roll your eyes and take one of their lands instead of not having a creature target if it said gain control of target creature and opponent controls. And
sure, and if you grab and if you grab the Forbidden Alchemy side of Treacherous Canta,
right?
Like, yeah, sure, I'm going to take that land that's going to let me filter and find spells.
Yeah.
That sounds like a good deal.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. After that, we've got Thassa's intervention. This is an intervention I can get behind. Looking at it for 4 mana, where X is 2, You can look at the top 2 cards of your library and put 2 of them into your hand, or just, dump the lands to the bottom of your library. So essentially it's an instant speed, draw 2 for 4, but it also provides you the versatility of countering a spell unless its controller pays twice X. So you got a syncopate that's, just for 1 more blue is twice as hard for them to get around. And if you need it, you can go.
The game goes.
Exactly. And you can just get cards if you need those instead.
Yeah, it's brutal and it's versatile. That's what I love about the card is there's velocity attached to this, and there's also the optional counter spell.
Right.
So even if you're the kind of person who's like, I want to main board velocity, you could be main boarding this counter spell. You could even not have a deck that runs counter, but now all of a sudden in the main board you have this optional counter spell that's like, oh, that's way out of my hands. Let's go ahead and use the counter side of this, even though I was planning on EOT drawing a bunch of cards.
Right. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Or drawing a bunch of cards and then picking 2 out of them. Obviously.
Exactly. Lastly, we've got Thassa's Oracle, and I put this card in here because at the bottom it says you win the game. If X is greater than or equal to the number of the cards in your library, you win the game, and X is you're looking down with your devotion to blue. I mean, I think that somebody's going to break this, Jake.
If it says win the game and it's like cheap, there's cards that say win the game, but they're like 7 mana, like Approach of the Second Sun, and you have to cast it twice. Like, this is good. I think it's good.
Yeah, I mean, the floor of it is look at the top 2 cards of your library, put up to one of them on top, and the rest on the bottom. So you can, filter your deck a little bit, and it's essentially a Scry 2. Except you can't leave them both on top. So, I think it's got some playability.
And I think they do want self-mill to be a thing. That's something that they seem to have been pushing in the last couple sets.
Yep. And
so maybe this does play with like Jace, Wielder of Mysteries from War of the Spark.
Right.
I don't know. Time will tell. But the 3-butt, I think we should mention, again, is attractive. It's outside of...
Gets around Wild Slash. Right.
Because what they could do is they could... or no, they would still get the ETB.
Yeah.
So even if they removed it after it entered, still... 1/3 is a good.
Yeah, it's nothing to shake a stick at. That takes us back around to the beginning with Treacherous Blessing and to the end of our Pioneer Sleeper series for Theros Beyond Death. We appreciate everybody watching. If you wouldn't mind, like we said, hitting that subscribe button before you leave, it would seriously help us out in a super free way. If you want to support us further.
If you've watched 2 or more Jake and Joel videos, you have to subscribe because obviously you're back. You like something about it.
The gauntlet has been thrown. If you want to support us further, we've got a Patreon. The link is down in the description below. And if you want to hang out, we are streaming most Tuesday and Thursday evenings over on Twitch. Jake, I'm tapped out.
And I am a tiny cactus. You want to see it?
Yeah, let's see the little tiny cactus.
Watch it be...
Oh, green screen. Green screen. Later.